So, I don't think I've said anything about this on the pod, but I'm doing a little vacation in a
Yeah.
week or so. Just heading out to Ganymede, for a little bit of,
Yeah.
just a little bit of, R&R time,
Why Ganymede? I mean, is there any
I mean, my
particular
parents
reason?
are stationed out there, so it's like,
I
it's
gotcha.
really easy for me to just go over there, stay with them, and then go see the place,
You
and,
know,
like, there's tons of water, which, I think water is very fun,
it is
like,
very pretty out
at,
there.
best Avatar movie was the one with a lot of water in it. Um,
That's a take.
yeah, it's the best one.
Some
It's the
people.
best of the two movies.
It's. I haven't. I've only seen one of them, and it's Fern Gully, but worse.
Yeah,
So.
well, I mean, I'll share my Avatar 2 take later. But back on point. So I've been raising up some money to make ends meet,
Sure.
and to just like have a bit of savings as well and just have spending money and stuff.
Right.
So I've been moonlighting on the Big Shot app.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
like it's kind of dangerous work, but like
Well, I can
really,
imagine.
yeah, but really all you have to do most of the time is just, keep an eye out, make sure, try to find any, little like, low end criminals. If if you recognize anybody, you can, you get a decent payout, I guess, if you're just like, if you just like, hey, I found him here, and then the cops can come pick him up, But
Sure.
like,
Yeah. I mean.
I mean, obviously cops bad, but like sometimes cops are all right
Well, I
in
mean,
certain
sure. And
situations.
if it shows you the bounties and it shows you the crimes,
Yeah.
then it's like, I mean,
Yeah, I can't.
obviously there's like gray area there, but
Yeah.
I can at least pick the guys like, oh,
Yeah.
that guy did some heinous shit.
Yeah, and if you're feeling up for it, you can also like for a bigger payout, you can also like apprehend them yourself.
Yeah.
Which I'm not
Done
really
any of
equipped
that
to
yet?
do.
No?
But the payout for just like informing the cops is pretty decent.
Okay.
But
May need to check that out.
yeah, but I was just I was just out and about. I flew over to the grocery store.
Sure.
And who I saw there?
No clue.
Former New York House Representative George Santos.
No way.
Yeah, he thought that he had a really good disguise on, but I could see right through the,
Anthony DeVolder.
yeah, I could see right through the Brazilian plastic surgery.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
So-
come on, because like
And like,
the Brazilian Earth shit just doesn't hold up anymore, man. It's
yeah,
like,
but the thing is like, the only thing he did wrong was be gay and do some wire fraud. So like, to me, I was like, well, if you're gay, you're supposed to do crimes, right? That's the idea.
I mean, that's like the motto,
You should
right?
be allowed
gay,
to do crimes. Yeah, but not only was it not that his gayness was not only was it not that just like canceled his record, but they had being gay as one of the crimes.
What's the bounty on that?
I mean, it was about, I think it was like, for tips anyway, it was like 350,000 woolongs.
For being gay?
Yeah. I mean,
Guys,
on
hide.
top of the other crimes, I guess.
Hide.
Yeah.
Nobody is safe.
Anyways, I picked that bastard up and took him in myself.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
For being gay?
We live in a
Look
fucked
out
up
for this guy.
We live in a fucked up system, man, okay? There is no ethical working under capitalism, all right? You're always working for somebody shitty, so don't judge me, man. Okay? Somebody else who was actually a bigot was going to call him man, right?
To be fair, of all the
And I told
people-
him that on the way there after I had zip tied his hands behind his back and threw him in my back seat. I was like, I'm sorry, man, I'm an ally, but money's money. And he was like, yeah, I get it. I did wire fraud. I get it. Yeah, that was me. So, sorry, gays.
Sorry, gay.
Anyways, this is How to Otaku. I'm Josh.
I'm broken.
And welcome to what will be by a long mile probably our longest episode.
I'm here for it, man.
Yeah.
We're in it for the long haul. I mean, I know we've been stepping away a lot from the kind of episode by episode recap breakdown stuff, and we're not going to really be doing that, but we do still have 26 episodes to cover.
Yeah.
This is a show I care about immensely.
Yeah.
And so
it takes some it's like a very episodic show as well.
It is,
right?
and it tackles different themes on different.
Yeah.
There's a lot to go into. So, we may chapter this one out. I'm not really sure how that works on YouTube, but I may try and figure it out. But we're just gonna start talking about Cowboy Bebop, and I hope you're along for the ride.
Yeah. So we did this show in 2022, right?
I think something like maybe 2021.
It was either late 2021 or early
It was like
2022.
December-ish.
Yeah. So it was around in that time length, and like I think we did a pretty good episode 1, but then episode 2 just kind of didn't pan out in the right way, and we just kind of got shaky, and we left the show for a while. But
I think
this was always this like
Cowboy Bebop episode 2 was what, like, we recorded it and it wasn't really to my taste. I thought we could have done better, and then it never saw the light of day, and then How to Otaku died for like a year and a half.
Yeah. It was very much like Spike in that way, where it was like, we thought
Guys, I promise I
dead.
didn't plan this. I promise I didn't plan this.
But for a while, it was like, it's like the splinter in our foot, where it was like, we had this unfinished business, and, we haven't taken care of it. And when's the right time to do that? And then, of course, Adult Swim came in and was like, hey, you want a really good excuse to cover all of this guy's original shows?
You guys remember Cowboy Bebop?
You guys remember Cowboy Bebop?
You guys know Shinichiro Watanabe?
Yeah, that crazy motherfucker.
Here we go. From humble origins of a Bandai Namco instigated toy brand deal that didn't really pan out, to one of the most highly acclaimed cult anime hits. Like, I don't even know if you can call it a cult classic anymore, because
it's not
fucking everybody knows about it.
I don't know if it's a cult classic. I mean,
by the time you get a live action Netflix adaptation, as dog shit as it was, you have a certain level of notoriety.
Yeah,
right?
like, I mean, it's not up to the popularity where, like, I could just, like, name drop it to my dad and he would know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
I mean, my dad would probably like Cowboy Bebop if I got him to stick with it. But
unironically, if you haven't seen Cowboy Bebop, I'm going to stop you here. Do not watch this episode before you've seen Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah.
Every single person needs to watch this show one time before they leave the planet. That is just like...
Maybe you can watch like the first 20 minutes of the episode. Just give us enough that it counts as a view on YouTube. and then go watch the show, and then come back and give us another view. Wouldn't that be nice?
Nice.
You can also consider liking and subscribing and
before you leave, subscribe, drop a like on the video. You can come back later. It'll be in your YouTube history.
Exactly. But yeah, it's just like, it's the first anime people recommend to people who don't watch anime for a lot of reasons, right?
It is definitely one of them. It's one of the ones that I recommend fairly early on. I think I'm still brain poisoned in that I will almost always throw Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood into like the first 3 or 4 that I will tell somebody about.
Yeah.
But Cowboy Bebop is 26 episodes. It's literally one core season. It is 26 of the strongest episodes of animation, of character development, of just artistic gumption. It is so strong in everything that it does. It is almost as close to perfect as I could point to and say anything is.
Yeah, like on second watch, I had like a couple little things here and there that rubbed me a bit, but like we can get into it.
Sure.
But on the whole, like it's it's just like
We
it's a
can't
remarkable
say anything
thing.
that anybody else hasn't already said, but I love it so much, so you're gonna
Yeah.
listen to me say it again.
Yeah, like, if you're like if you're a child and you have like a child sensibilities, then like the first anime you should probably watch is like, one of the Ghiblis, right? It's something like Ponyo or Kiki's Delivery Service or Totoro or whatever. Maybe if you're in your teenage years, you go with like, Mononoke or something like that.
Right.
But like, if you're an adult with an adult sensibility, I feel like, and you watch a lot of like prestige television, especially. Like, I think Cowboy Bebop is one of the easiest to recommend because I don't want to say it has like a quote unquote Western sensibility. I think that's one of the things that I said mistakenly on the first episode is that like it's, so Westernized in its storytelling. But I think that like if one of your hangups about anime is that like they explain everything to you and like they're like, there's no room for nuance in the storytelling and I say this not to be mean to those, like sometimes being obvious is the point and that can be a fine artistic choice. But if that's a rub for you,
Right.
Then Cowboy Bebop is the antithesis of that because
these characters have lived entire lives before we ever meet them.
yeah.
They have so much and I've heard before like, oh, I want the show about what Spike was like when he was in the Syndicate.
Yeah.
And it's like, no.
I mean, if Watanabe like comes up with a really cool version of that has like really great stories told in between it, sure, I'd love to see that. But like, I don't want to force it out of him.
But I don't need it. And I think so
Yeah.
much of the point of Bebop is that not everything. I mean, you can live an entire life and not be defined by that.
Yeah.
You can develop as a person from anything. You can become stronger. You can get over any, not necessarily guilt. I wouldn't say that these people are super guilt ridden for the most part. They have baggage.
Yeah.
Guilt.
It's definitely a show about baggage.
It's definitely a show about baggage. I mean, we with Spike and Julia, with Jet and the ISSP, with literally
Even-
the character that is Faye Valentine.
Yeah, and of course, even Ed and her abandonment issues.
Exactly.
Right.
Oh my god, dude! Talk like a child.
Oh.
Holy shit!
Yeah, but like, even amongst all of that, like, hoity-toity emotional shit, like, it's like every other episode is just like a fun riff on some genre.
Right,
And,
they're always playing around. We get a couple horror episodes, one more like sci-fi, superficial, like not sci-fi.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, sci-fi. We get like the alien terror, and then we get like a scary clown, like so, and it plays around with a lot of different themes and a lot of different stuff, which is kind of again another one of the main driving points, another one of the main like through lines of the show.
Yeah.
I remember in the first episode we did on Bebop, I kind of had it written out and memorized and read through the diatribe of the kind of flashing words that are played through the underline of the opening.
Yeah.
But it's kind of this thesis statement for the show of like developing a new genre unto itself.
Yeah.
It's a fusion of Western and jazz and spiritual and Oriental and it's a melting pot. It is. I've been rambling.
No, you're good.
Please
You're good.
go.
So, just to give a little bit of context for the show, because I was reading up on it. So, like we kind of alluded to earlier, it was initially like, Bandai, the toy line, the toy division was basically like, they went up to this, some of the creatives, including Shinichiro Watanabe, the director of, I think Mobile Suit Gundam. Does that sound right?
I think he worked on. I don't know if it was necessarily Mobile Suit, but
Or maybe it was Macross. I need to, you look that up. But like somebody who had already worked on some franchise stuff before, and they were like, okay, we want to sell more like spaceship figures and shit like that. So like you guys just create a Macross Plus. So you guys just create a show that has spaceships in it and anything is fine, right? Just like, do whatever you want. It doesn't really matter as long as we can sell spaceships with it. And then, you get all these people in this room, like, I listened to the episode or the commentary track with Watanabe and Yoko Kanno, the composer.
Yeah.
Trying to get them on topic is insane.
Which and that sounds. I hear that. I was not able to listen through to the commentary track, which I would love to do. I've gotten my hands on.
They're not especially informative, I would say.
But I think even that is informative in that, like, it's just, they're just having fun.
Yeah.
They're just like they created this thing out of sheer creative passion.
Yeah.
And they're just having fun.
Yeah, like, you get Watanabe, who has all these influences from, like you said, Westerns and sci-fi and, like all these different cultures as well. And then you get Yoko Kanno, who is like just this like, antsy little motherfucker who like apparently doesn't listen to music in the real world, but then just like, the only music she listens to is when she's like in the studio playing shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, she just keeps all of that creativity bottled up until she can put it somewhere.
And
right?
I'm sitting here like, I just like hearing these tracks in my, like, oh my God, dude.
Yeah.
Every part of it is so
but like that,
artistically strong.
You get those two, and then like, the amazing like fucking spaceship designer and the character artist and all that, and like they had like this whole core team built together, right? I think they went under the pseudonym Hajime Yatate as a conglomerate, right? That's what they do for all of Sunrise's stuff.
Sure.
So they were all together and just like creating like this crazy fusion of all these ideas, and then they present it to Bandai, and Bandai's like, well, when we said anything, we didn't mean that.
And so here we are, it's the year 2025, and this is the best that we could manage in terms of Cowboy Bebop spaceship models.
Yeah.
Because it's either $250 for a out-of-print Bandai official Swordfish 2 model kit that is not in any of the shops in our area, or Lego mocks that fans have built because they're desperate for something like this.
Yeah. If you're listening to us audio only, the pictures will be up on Instagram, I bet.
Yeah.
But not Instagram, Blue Sky.
Blue Sky.
But anyways, they were like, well, when we said that we were looking for just about anything with spaceships in it, we didn't mean something that was too violent to show to like teenagers, right?
Right. Which
too violent and weird to appeal to teenagers.
That was kind of their push, but like, oh my God, dude, this is too violent. This is too violent for Bandai.
Yeah, like
for a 13-year-old. I mean,
it can get pretty gnarly in some episodes, but like, I'm sure that they could have like negotiated something, but no, Bandai Toy Division was just like, no, sorry, we're not interested anymore. We're dropping the project.
We don't want to play with you dropping Woody in the toy bucket.
And Watanabe was like, man, if it weren't for Bandai Visual stepping in, the other division of Bandai, he was like, I might be at the grocery store right now. I might be working at the grocery store.
Right.
But like, Bandai Visual basically just like went over and they were like, oh, we like this. Why don't you guys just like hop on over to the other building and
just keep doing whatever you want to do.
Thing.
Which thank fucking God we got.
Yeah.
Thank God. Like I'm not a religious person. I can't think of anything to say other than thank God that this got made.
Yeah, like. We should get into the show proper.
So,
the year is, 2157 or something like that.
I believe that's pretty close.
But yeah, basically, we've colonized most of the solar system, right? We got settlements on Jupiter and Ganymede and Mars and all sorts of places.
Well, and there are also like a bunch of other little like colony settlements on like moons and stuff, and so we get some of the more culture from like Earth that starts to bleed out, where it's like, okay, this undiscovered moon or this undiscovered satellite that locked itself in orbit later on, Tijuana. Like so, and there's just a lot of flavor of stuff like that.
But like it's very Wild West, meets like like retrofuturism,
right?
But basically, like, my understanding is that, like, in a world so wide, it's like we don't have the ability to expand the police force this crazily.
Right.
And to keep, like, drug trafficking and stuff like that out of place. Just kind of getting into the first episode.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, what we do, we're back to bounty hunters.
We bring back bounty hunters, baby.
Yeah.
Which, like, I mean, it pulls on a lot of different themes already of like space is the final frontier. They used to call the West the unexplored frontier, and there are a lot of kind of people have been playing on that concept for decades, as far as I'm aware. But might be I'm just glazing, but this is like the strongest
like it's
vision of that.
Yeah, like to me, it's like I mean. Maybe as we get a little bit closer to 2157, I've always felt that like sci-fi tends to overestimate humans' ability to do these sorts of things, right? Back in the 50s, they thought that in the fucking 90s we were going to have flying cars and shit.
But literally, the Jetsons thought that was going to take place in like 2010.
We can't even get beyond gasoline. But like this show, like it has like the retrofuturist thing where like, everything's made out of like, clunky CRTs and like, like scuffed up metal and shit. And it's like, this is what the future would look like in my eyes, where it's like, sure, there are some ritzy places that, are really, really nice or whatever. But like, if you're traveling from one place to another through a spaceship and you're just like doing that, it's like, your car's probably gonna not, your ship's not going to look that great after the first few times.
You'll ding a space rock or two. Yeah. There's a bolt floating out there.
There'll be a rough landing.
Exactly. Hey, you'll need to, oh shit, my tank is almost empty. I gotta land on Tijuana before I hop over to Ganymede,
and like, it is. And then, like, on these new colonies, everything is made from, like, like, basic concrete and stuff like that. The kinds of things that would be really easy to set up quickly.
Right.
Right? So, like, it's just, like, you feel like this world is really breathed in, where it's, like, like, yes, there is culture all over the place. And, like you were saying, the world is, like, a big cultural melting pot where, like, people of all different ethnicities and religions are still wandering the cosmos and finding their place.
Right.
But like, amongst that culture is like a very like practical sense of place.
Right.
And
we get into that really early on. So like we're initially established with these two characters. We are given no backstory on them whatsoever, but
we're given like
Spike Spiegel and Jet Black.
We get like the very vaguest hints of Spike's backstory right before the opening, which we'll get to the opening.
There's like this melancholy piano music, and there's like flashback scene, and you can't really tell what's going on, but it looks like he's dying. And
like yep. Which we'll get to that once we get to like some of the more presentational aspects, but like that opening of just like like we get like the snippets of backstory of this where we don't have any context for the imagery itself, but it's so enticing and it just makes you want to know more about this person.
It's presented very like neo-noir-esque, like a French detective film almost.
Yeah, but like
the black and white, and in the music choice, and in the shot composition.
Yeah.
And so it immediately it's like, I'm not sure this is what I was expecting from this. So it gives you that kind of immediate pull.
Yeah, and and then when you see Spike on the ship, I think a lot of first viewers will be like, okay, is this a view into the future or is it a view into the past? And that kind of question is like they slowly put in little droplets of backstory for Spike, and I really, really love that. Right. They actually do that with all the characters, basically, right? Like, they never give us all the information on any of the main 4 characters right away.
No, and it's never even really explicit. Like, it's never stated as exposition for the viewers. Yeah. It's always kind of, you pick up on it in their conversations with other people, with people they know, with people that they're meeting, and they only give the information that's necessary at any given time. Like, and Spike introduces himself as a bounty hunter to the wife of Asimov Solensen, who is a drug dealer that is peddling like an aerosolized eye spray that turns you fucking berserk.
Yeah. Berserk. But holy fuck, is that nuts from Berserk?
Oh my god.
But like he's like you get just like all these little snippets of backstory, and like you have to put the puzzle pieces together. And I think, like I was saying before, it's like not only is it unusual for like for anime to do that, I guess, because a lot of it's recreated from manga, which is very writing heavy, right? But it's also like just unusual for most television to just to not over explain things,
right? To kind of just leave you to figure it out.
Yeah. So like, but anyway, we're introduced to Spike and Jet on this on their ship. And it's like immediately
decrepit fishing vessel, the Bebop.
Yeah, and they are hungry, and guess what? That's going to be a recurring theme for the show. It's just that they are always motivated by the need for food.
Fucking hungry, man.
Which like is so real. Like I think this kind of came up in the Dungeon Meshi episode, but like I think food is always like a really important storytelling device because like it's the one thing it's the one thing you constantly need to be buying all of the time to survive.
It is what we are all bound by, especially when you frame this like uber capitalist, we are hunting people for money, bounty hunters in space system. It's like, okay, we're paycheck to paycheck, hand to mouth.
Yeah.
And our ticket to money is drug dealers, sex traffickers, eco-terrorists.
Yeah, and like the show implies a lot of time in between episodes, but like it takes you 8 episodes to see them actually successfully cash in a bounty. Yeah. So that really gives you the sense of like how fickle this industry is for them.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of times it's not even like there's so much of it that is personally driven on their end to refuse the bounty. It's very much, not very much, but there are many stories of like the gray area of like, where do we draw the line of criminality and morality?
Yeah.
And as a bounty hunter, where am I involving myself in this?
Yeah, because there's the one episode where the guy needs to get the flower for his sister because the flower is like this precious plant that can create this drug that can cure her blindness. Right. And Spike decides in a moment when they're all confronted by the criminals that are chasing after him. It's like,
because
you need to go.
Looks up to Spike. He's joined the syndicate. Yeah. So like that, there's a bounty on his head, and Spike has to make this decision. Like, this is the guy I'm looking for.
Yeah. I don't need to catch this guy.
You got to get out.
I can find another guy. But yeah, like it's all that little shit. But like you said, like I was saying, like they're broke as fuck. Their spaceship is like always dingy as fuck.
Their bell peppers and beef ain't got no beef in it.
Yeah, and like one of the interesting things about that is that like you can like they never stop beefing, but their beefing changes over the course of the show. Beefing being a pun, but
dramatically. I mean, there's even like there are waves to it because you can sense, especially between Spike and Jet, because once the other characters start getting introduced, Spike's attention starts getting drawn more to, why are there all these motherfuckers on my ship? Instead of beefing with Jet over like, why is there no bell peppers and beef? What happened to this bounty?
Exactly.
It's much more like me and Jet are copacetic. We're on the same page. Who is this? Why is there a dog?
Exactly. Like you can literally like, when Faye and then Ed and Ein are brought into the ship, it's like you can feel like a line being drawn in the sand between boys club and girls club.
you almost see Spike getting out the fucking chalk and just drawing lines down the center of the Bebop.
Which for these guys I totally understand, right? Because it's like, Spike is like, he's not like an awful guy or anything, but like, and Jet isn't either, but they all they have these kind of like intuitive understandings of women that are, a little bit simplistic,
Definitely.
But like it doesn't sand those rough edges for them, and it allows it to create that storytelling thing where it's like, like Spike is more likely to like let on a little bit about himself to Jet than he is to Faye, just because of the gender gap, right?
Well, there's that. There's also Faye, from literally the second they meet her, shows them that they can't trust her.
Yeah.
They can't trust her half as far as they can throw her.
Yeah, because like she like steals all of their money several times. And blows it all at casinos and on fucking horse races and
Well, the first time they meet is they're in a casino and she's gotten herself embroiled in some Ponzi scheme that they're running to try and get this like special computer chip that's hidden in a poker chip, and it just deal goes bad. And she is immediately showing herself like, wait a minute. And Spike's not stupid. He sees exactly what's going on. There's some game being played. He may not know exactly what, but he knows that she wants this thing, and he doesn't necessarily want her to have it. He thinks that if she wants it, then maybe I want it.
I think in that moment it's like he doesn't know what's going on yet.
Right.
So like he doesn't know that this specific chip is important to her. I think he's just like, you've been cheating this whole time. I know you've been cheating.
Right.
To just, like get the house all the money, he assumes. So I'm not going to give you a tip. And in fact, this chip that I was saving for myself, I am going to swallow it.
I'm just going to eat it, dude.
And it is funny, like, sometimes the way that coincidences happen in this show, right? Like, the two guys bump into each other and accidentally trade coins.
Yeah.
Or
and
trade
he
chips.
just kind of looks like Dollar Store Spike by coincidence.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, people nitpick about coincidences, but like there's also like the Pixar rule. Like Pixar has like a whole bunch of storytelling rules, and one of them is that coincidence is fine if it's inconvenient for the main characters.
Right.
If it's like, if it creates more problems for the characters that they then have to use their intuition to solve.
If it creates an interesting solution, we can have a coincidence. Or an interesting situation, rather.
Yeah. Whereas, if somebody wins by coincidence, then it's seen as like, a little cheap.
Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah. But yeah, like it's just all that sort of shit. And of course, like, that brings the question of kind of like higher beings and spirituality into it, because there's a lot of that in this show too.
So much, just like immediately from episode 1.
Yeah.
The first thing that Spike does, he's like, oh, we got a bounty. We need info. I'm going to go talk to the shaman.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go roll some bones. We get, is it with Faye later on in a couple episodes where she passes, oh no, I'm letting Samurai Champloo bleed into my brain.
Yeah. No, but there is a scene where the guy who's looking for the dog is, he goes up to some like fortune teller on the street, and the fortune teller like predicts exactly what's going to happen.
Right.
And then it does. And it, just like all these little things where it's like it points to this kind of like this sense of fate in the universe, and it's
Right.
never over explained. It's never like, oh, there's a god or anything, but like, yeah, there are people who are connected to the way in which the universe is going to operate, and and it's implied that like Spike has a little bit of that too, because he is like, he is seeing he says he's seeing the past and the future at the same time.
Right, and they play a lot with that. They like he talks about having died, having been
Yeah.
killed by a woman,
Yep.
Julia. We'll get to that. But I almost like in some readings I don't know. Like in some readings I'm like, oh, that's obviously just a metaphor.
Yeah.
But like in other readings of it, in other senses, maybe he fucking did.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm definitely not saying that's like the correct interpretation, but it's like, he is right in the sense that he is going to die again, right? We see by the end. So like, sorry, I probably should have told you guys that there were going to be real spoilers beyond this point,
Yeah.
but but yeah, like he is, his intuition about that is correct. And it's like, perhaps dying and touching the divine at some point really did, like give him a sense that like, even if this isn't the end is still coming for you. And it's going to be tangled up in Julia and Vicious again,
Yep.
but he can't avoid it. It's just,
It's inevitable.
he just wants that girl so hard.
He's gonna carry that with him.
Yeah. But, getting back into the fun of the show,
Yeah.
like, so after they establish that, after they establish where this guy in this first episode can be found, he's like, he waits outside of a fucking cantina for him dressed in a big sombrero, and then they have a cool action scene. And
One of the most well animated fight scenes in anything ever.
yeah, just like incredibly, like, just, it's so fluid, man. It's
So
like,
well choreographed,
Yeah.
so inventive in the ways that like
yeah.
we're not just getting like actual realistic martial arts, which we are getting, but it's being punched up obviously because it's in animation, and we're also getting ridiculous camera angles that would never be possible
Yeah.
flowing through this scene.
Yeah, like, just like and one thing I noticed is that like in a lot of the action scenes that don't involve Spike, the hand-to-hand combat can be extremely like messy and crunchy, yeah. But like whenever Spike's in the room punching somebody, he's just like dancing around.
It's a
and, like,
dance. It's
yeah.
a game.
He's got like the fucking Bruce Lee magic,
Exactly.
like, and it's all just so fluid with him. It's a nice little touch there that it's like, he's the guy who in a scrap can really like, get things done without getting himself hurt.
He can focus a target and realize that there are two other guys behind him and
Yeah.
fucking like it just like
It's so good that like he can basically do it in his sleep, right? Like, there's the bit in where they're catching some guys in the airplane, the fucking the terrorists in the plane, and it's
Right.
like, which I imagine that was one of the episodes that was cut during 9/11, right after 9/11. But he's like literally like waking up from a nap and like accidentally knocks these guys out.
right.
He's just so effortless, right? Like, and I mean, if we want to talk about the English voice cast, like, just
Phenomenal.
yeah, just like
phenomenal.
yeah, like half of having a great performance is casting, is what I hear. And like apparently all of the primary actors for the cast were first choices. They were just like, it's you.
Steve Bloom.
It's you. Yep. It's you. It's you. It's you. It's you. And they were all correct because like, Steve Blum just has like, just the total coolness and
just nonchalant.
Yeah, and like
I know that's like big in the zeitgeist right now. You fucking Zoomers need to learn how words are properly used. Spike is just there. He's very go with the flow. He is the definition of cool,
yeah.
collected,
Yeah, and then
mostly.
yeah, and then Bo Billingsley as Jet, where it's like apparently like the Japanese voice actor has like a bit of an accent going on, and they tried that at first, but then Bo was like, or then the director was like, you know what, let's just try your voice, right? And it's just
I
like
can't hear anybody else's Jet.
he just like he perfectly catches the sense that like this person is like he is the exasperated dad of the group. He is like, I care for all of you so much, which is why I'm so angry that you guys are always doing dumb shit. And I'm going to tell you get the fuck out of the house, you know? But then once once you're down on your luck and you need to come back in, it's just like,
We'll have some bell peppers
Yeah.
and beef for you.
yeah, I don't have much to give you, but I can give you what I got. Yeah, and like, oh my god, they're all so good. And like, Wendy Lee is fantastic. She just like she gets the character and she can like, the character seems to be this like, she's a bit of a play on the femme fatale, right? But
Yeah.
like, just like but she has a lot of interiority going on.
They are people.
Yeah.
They are not characters. They are people.
Yeah.
All of them. At least everybody in the main cast.
Yeah. And like when she finally like she catches up to her past life and like figures everything out and like the two selves kind of merge, she's able to play that so well.
Oh my god, dude.
It is just so crazy when like, she hops out of the shower, bumps into Spike, and like apologizes for the first time in her life. It's like, I get it. You are like, there was another person hidden in you, and now it is part of you again. It is.
When I talk about character development, peak.
Peak. Yeah. And then let me look up who did Ed. I need to know that because Melissa Fawn, she is also stellar, and she added her own like little she's a singer by training, right? Like she was actually the understudy for Glinda in the Los Angeles production of Wicked, I want to say.
Damn.
So like, she was doing pretty well.
Right.
And and like she just like she adds that sing-songiness to all of her mannerisms and stuff, and like, ooh, it's an alien space creature. All of that shit is just like it's all just like directing the voice actors and caring so much about it.
Well, and there's so much in that performance that I think is kind of just under the surface of like, yes, it is a very eccentric, very intelligent child.
Yeah. It's still a
defending themselves from the harsh realities of a world where their parents would abandon them for practically no reason.
Yeah.
To be lost in the deserts of Earth, post-apocalypse, like
Yeah.
as a baby. And so developing from that, like, I can't even imagine what that would be like, but I get the sense that Ed is not just crazy.
Yeah.
But like there's a layer there. That's not Ed.
Yeah. And like, not to get too far ahead, but when she leaves the Bebop right before the very end, and Ed comes with her, or Ein comes with her, it's like, she's been abandoned so many times, right? Her father literally abandons her a second time after meeting up with her again. And, and I think that for her is just kind of like, well, I know these adults have their own shit going on and that I'm not important to that. So I might as well just go now that I've, kind of like, I feel like I've finished everything I need to do there. And, but Ina's allowed to come with me because Ina's not a person. Ina's a dog and can be my friend and can be with me all the time.
I mean, I get a very strong sense of I can't let it happen again.
Yeah.
I have to leave them before they leave me.
Yep. But Ine can come along because dog is friend.
Dog is friend?
Yeah, and it's very sweet.
God.
That was actually one of the things I was going to
Brogan
complain.
catching tears counter fucking 7.
That was one of the things I was actually going to complain about because before talking about Ed, I was like, why did Ed have to leave right before the end? But then talking about it, it's like, yeah, that's probably why she did. And it's like,
I fucking love Cowboy Bebop.
it's so good. But yeah, like getting back into the show, it's like just it's incredibly serialized and it's very like, case of the week,
Right.
like, who's the bounty, where's the bounty at, how will we find them, like what wrinkles in the bounty take place, and then ultimately do they catch them or not?
Right.
More often not.
And every single every single episode is so much its own piece of art.
Mm-hmm.
It like with oh my god, what is it? Heavy Metal Queen, not Honky Tonk Girl.
Love that episode.
We get such a strong character in
VT.
VT, yeah. I mean, we get the introduction in the bar where there's kind of this brawl that goes down.
Yeah.
Spike, we were talking
Yeah.
where Spike he's drunk and he's drinking this
Yep.
fucked up like hangover cure.
Exactly.
And oh my god.
And then right after that, VT is like, okay, you helped me with this fucking bar fight. Whereas like, VT was trying to help this waitress
Right.
get out of a weird situation with some dudes. And then, Spike got roped into it and helped her out. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to buy you a drink. And then she starts complaining about the fucking bounty hunters that come in.
And he's like, oh,
yeah, I don't know anything about that.
bounty hunters, that sounds like rough business.
And then Jet calls on the radio. Is like, hey, we got to
Hey,
leave.
we got a bounty. Spike, get back to the Bebop.
And it's like, you can... The performance in this moment is fantastic because VT is just like, she, in her heart of hearts, is like, I have kind of met a decent person on this side, but like, she cannot really open herself up to be like, this might actually change my perception of these kinds of douchebags.
Right.
So I need to tell him to get lost. But you can see that it's like, she's not like torn up about it.
No.
She's just like, I guess I gotta tell him to fuck off now.
And we get such a strong sense of her character
Yeah.
in the brief moments that we get with her through that,
Yeah.
and through the kind of like the chat that she has with one of the guys on the station,
Yeah.
where they're talking about like bookkeeping of like, oh, I heard you made this run in
Yeah.
record time, like, yeah. And then by the end of the episode, where we get the come around where she helps them escape from the asteroid field in the fucking
Yeah.
my in the
And-
triple wide fucking
Yeah,
space
exactly.
trucker. Ah,
Yeah, that's another thing about the show is that like basically every episode you are seeing like a new perspective on this world that they've created, right? Like, in Heavy Metal Queen, it's obviously like, well, there are just people in their day-to-day lives who are like, traversing space to just do a regular job that we do nowadays.
Right.
It's just now in space.
nobody would have ever thought, except now that you put it right in front of my face, I'm like, oh fucking,
Yeah.
of course there are space truckers.
Yeah, because, there's shit on Ganymede that you need to get to fucking Mars.
Exactly.
But yeah, and it's like you put them into that perspective and it's like, yeah, so, and another thing is that like in this universe they have like warp gates where it's like, take it from this place to this place to this place. But I guess the truckers are so heavy that they can't go through those. So it's like, you just got to be comfortable with spending months in space. Just,
It's like, oh fuck.
Thank God they have the radios to talk to people, or else,
you might actually like that. Might be a really if somebody wants to write some Cowboy Bebop fan theory crafting.
Yeah.
Trucker alone in space goes crazy.
Yeah. But yeah, like, and then, Gateway Shuffle, which is one of my favorite episodes is, or at least one of my favorite, like, climaxes to one of the episodes where, like, there's like this eco-terrorist group.
Right,
and,
they're trying to save the Ganymede sea rats or whatever
exactly.
they're called,
And it's like, okay, they've stopped the evil gas or whatever from
the neurotoxin that turns you into a monkey.
Neurotoxin that turns you into a monkey. They've finally stopped that, but it's like now we're chasing after the bounty, and it's like, oh no, they've given up on the bounty and they're just going to fucking close the gates so that like everybody ends up in like this weird liminal reality that they can never escape from, and it's like, oh god, that horror in this universe now I have to think about. But then they turn it into a fucking chase scene.
Awesome. Man-made horrors beyond my comprehension.
Where like the craziest Yoko Kanno track ever is playing. And they're like, gotta get out, gotta get out, gotta get out. It's so good. It's so good.
So good. Oh my god. Gateway Shuffle. There are a couple that are don't hit as strong for me as others.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not huge on the, like, freaky genius kid thing that they do in Sympathy for the Devil. Like, it's interesting. It's definitely an interesting storyline, but it doesn't pull me as much as some of the other ones do, as like Toys in the Attic with the spooky space lobster.
Yeah, that's interesting because like even though it's an Alien pastiche and I love Alien, that's one of the ones that I'm a little less captivated by. Like, it's a pretty good episode and it's pretty fun, but like the fact that it is non-canon kind of like it just kind of lessens its impact for me, I guess.
Sure.
Like, spoiler alert for that episode, they all die at the end, but it doesn't matter because it's not canon. But like I do think that episode is a little interesting because it's like they're kind of exploring like, what is the like the boredom part of space travel like. Right. Where it's like they're all kind of out in space just going by and it's like, well, we're kind of low on food and there's nothing to do.
I don't know if that's necessarily confirmed non-canon. If it is, cool. I've always kind of more read it just that like it is that it's like, oh god, we've gone such a stretch of time in space with so little resources that we're all just we kind of lost it a little bit for a while.
Oh, you think that it's like a collective hallucination or something?
Yeah, I mean we've seen that. We see that again with not Mushroom Dance.
Mushroom Samba.
Called? Yeah, Mushroom Samba.
Though that's drug induced.
That is drug induced, but this, I mean, like people do hallucinate when they're starving.
I get it. Like, I just don't see enough textual evidence for that. And it does literally end with the end, and then, there's like the non-diegetic next episode thing they always do, where Ed is like, I guess they all died. Oh well, Cowboy Bebop is over. Which I love those. A lot of those are really funny. And they don't always get a new character to do it, but there is never a character that I would want to do one that doesn't get to do one.
Right.
Like the fucking TV hosts get to do one, the old guys get to do one too, and it's like, oh god, we've wasted so much time.
You people wouldn't even be able to watch this show if it weren't for the animation that I'd done with my two good buddies. Where are those two good buddies you're talking about?
It is funny that those guys always show up. It's like, I don't know if it's the impetus for the fucking cabbage guy in Avatar, but like, I feel like there's a connection point somewhere where it's like characters that just happen to be everywhere when, that just happen to show up every like 5 episodes in a show, regardless of whether or not it makes that much sense.
You do always get like weird fan theories about that shit though, where it's like, oh, the character that keeps showing up in different places. Like I think they did this in The Simpsons where they turned it into that one guy who's always just happens to be working at whatever place is actually a hive mind of people, and It was like a Treehouse of Horror episode or something, but
Yeah. Yeah, but the Treehouse of Horror episodes aren't canon, right? So I don't think that's
no. But I mean, it's
the
a
canon.
concept.
Yeah, and the canon of Simpsons is kind of loose, anyways. You know,
I
it's
think
like who
Simpsons
cares?
canon, like, come on.
Yeah, but like, you know, I find those kind of fan theories to just be didactic and annoying.
I agree.
Like most fan theories, actually,
most fan
where it's
theories.
like, you know,
Actually, Tommy Pickles is dead.
yeah, like I actually learned the terms for this, like, you know, a little bit ago. It was like it's Holmesian analysis versus Doylean analysis, where it's like, you know, are you examining something from the perspective of Sherlock Holmes in the story, or are you examining it from like the perspective of the writer outside of the story? Sure. And like I've always been more of a Doylean, where it's like I'm examining like the, you know, the themes and the ideas that the writer is trying to work through in the real world. And I get annoyed whenever people are like, but why isn't it like this from a fucking, you know, from a fucking inside the realm of the world thing? And it's like, I don't care about that. That world doesn't exist.
Go be John Malkovich. Fuck off.
Anyways, Cowboy Bebop, a television show. Yeah, but like, you know, we talked about a lot of that stuff. We should bring up Big Shot, which is like just one of the funnest little like running gags that has ever been conceived. It's like, and just a great piece of world building, I think. Where
It
it's
is
like,
just to have like, okay, we have space television, we have bounty hunters. How do bounty hunters get information on bounties? Because there's not really like an internet.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's explicitly not an internet, because there are computers and there are like databases and there are things that we see Jet interact with a lot to kind of index things and look things up.
I think that there probably is an internet. It's just like you need to be kind of near a settlement for it to be true. Because and like you can get TV broadcasts way out, but like you can't connect to people way out.
And there's also the argument like, well, and you know, if I was a bounty hunter, I would have the fucking TV on the Big Shot channel all the time, because if they call in some crazy fucking bounty, I want to be the first motherfucker to hear about it.
But the thing about that is that the show is really fucking annoying. And that's the thing, is that like, you know, they take what could be like really boring exposition where it's like, all right, here's our bounty for this week. It's this guy who did this thing. And it's like, no, like up the presentation on that, use it as a piece of world building to be like, this is the kind of kitschy TV show that would be around for this sort of thing. Right.
You get a guy in literal Western cowboy attire and a girl who is wearing
just enough to be broadcast safe.
Yeah, just enough of Western cowboy attire to be technically considered to be wearing clothes.
Yeah. And they're also playing like these caricatures of cowboys and cowgirls, right? Where like the main guy has like this strange mix of like a Texas and Mexican accent that he is constantly
partners
that like is clearly fake, and like we literally see the guy who acted in that in a later scene where he just sounds like a guy. Yep.
So yeah,
and he's just like, hi mom, you know, everything's gonna be okay, I'm gonna find another job. And Faye's just like, where do I know that guy? And then, you know, like the ditzy bimbo cowgirl type who, like, you know, like when they finally have been told that the show is getting canceled, like she just takes off that facade and is just like, you're gonna hear from my fucking lawyer.
You're canceling my fucking show. We have a contract.
Just good, like, again, just like great world building and fixes
excellent
the
world building.
Fixes
excellent
the problem,
character writing.
Yeah, fixes the problem of giving the exposition for every episode, right? You know, and I think it's always funny when they divulge the information, because sometimes sometimes it'll be like, we have the information on the guy before we meet him, right? But then it's always fun when it's like, we just meet some random guy in some random happenstance, and then we come back to the ship, and it's like, oh wait, that was the guy?
Right. And again, it's always like it's the Pixar thing. If
Yeah.
it's, a coincidence is okay if it means it's going to create an interesting dilemma for our protagonists.
Yeah.
Wow, man.
It's just really, really good. Like, let me try to just like run through the Rolodex of all the episodes, because that's the thing. They all have their own little gimmicks, right? You know, there's the fucking the casino episode, the third one, and then they have, you know, like, let me think. They have the fucking blaxploitation riff with Mushroom Samba.
Sure.
You know, they dive a little bit more into the gritty neo-noir whenever we're dealing with Jet's backstory.
Right.
You know,
When we get into Black Dog Serenade.
and interestingly, like, you know, the Faye and Jet backstories are often like really like sweet and romantic and not saccharine, but like, I guess, melancholic, you know, right? Like, I forget Ganymede Elegy, right? That's basically the first time where we get like a real sense of anybody's backstory in this show.
And that's Jet and Alyssa,
Yeah.
and which we already get introduced to Alyssa, or is it in that episode the first time we get introduced to her through Spike?
Alyssa?
Yeah,
Like, you mean the character that Jet knew back in the day?
Yes.
I don't think they ever meet Jet and her. I think you might be confusing her with Julia's friend who runs the magazine shop.
I am. I'm stupid.
No, that's fine. She comes back right at the end for Real Folk Blues. But yeah, like that episode where like it's like we see this like old flame that they had, and you know, Jet's working through this moment where it's like, we had a good thing going. Why did you just like up and leave? And, you know, through this crazy set of circumstances where, again, coincidentally, she just happens to be dating a guy who has a bounty on him.
Right.
So they ended up chasing him down at the end, and she pulls a gun on him. And then in the emotion of that, she just like unloads all of that shit where she's like, you never let me decide anything. And like, you were right most of the time, but like, I never felt like a real person because I never got to make any decisions. And that's why I left.
Yeah.
You know? And like, it just gets into that emotionality where it's like, yeah, you can always be doing the right thing for somebody, or like doing the like technically correct thing for them, but then stifling them and never letting them live their own life. And part of any relationship is knowing where the line is between protecting somebody and letting them be themselves.
Oh, definitely. I mean, and we talked about this the other day with the fucking Last of Us. And I feel like this is such a stronger push on that than the Last of Us ever was.
We talk outside of the podcast, in case you didn't know.
We live together, so it happens sometimes.
Probably shouldn't have said that much, but it's fine.
I mean, I live here in this garage on the studio 24/7.
Exactly. I don't exist outside of the little box that you're watching on. And
I'm actually a figment of your computer's imagination.
And every time you click that like and subscribe button and then click to another video, this version of me dies, and another version another version that exists in the next video of ours that you are watching is a different me. So I just want you to know that every time you watch a new video of us, we are dying and getting reborn.
It hurts.
And it's not the same one. It hurts. Okay? That's the only thing that carries over is the pain. Please make it stop. This would be the greatest part to cut to a commercial break.
Hey, Tom, if you were stranded...
Sorry, what was that?
If you were stranded on a deserted space station...
I think it's time to blow this scene. Uh-huh.
If you were stranded on a deserted space station and had to pick only one show...
Bebop.
Okay, well, next Saturday it's Cowboy Bebop all night long starting at midnight.
Bang. Bang. Only Toonami on Adult Swim.
Drink cactus juice. It'll quench ya. Nothing's quenchier. It's the quenchiest.
It's the quenchiest.
This bottle is insane. It literally like So I filled it up like this much with ice, and then filled it up full with water one day. I drank all of that. Then I poured in a Dr. Pepper, drank all of that. Poured in another cup of water, drank all of that, and then it still had ice in it.
This is the same. This still has ice in it from last night.
And that was over the course of like 14 hours.
This is the same ice I put in this at like 10 p.m. last night before I went to bed.
Man, you know a good bottle when you get one. LTTstore.com.
Linus, money.
Yeah. Is that where we're picking back up?
I'll throw that in there probably. You did say you wanted to go get some more water though, didn't you?
No. I was just saying I was going to drink some water from this.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to the show.
There are really only like a handful more like really important points that I feel like we need to hit on.
But of course, like anytime any of us brings up any episode, it can be like we can go on about this for like
Exactly
10 minutes, just picking up everything that we love about it.
But I think really we should kind of dive a little more into like the backgrounds of the characters. Specifically, like I think we should go kind of reverse order. So, we'll do Ein because Ein is science dog.
Ein is just science dog, and he's definitely fun to have. He adds a little bit of like flavor to the world. He adds some good
personality
to the story.
To the Bebop.
Yeah, but apart from every once in a while where he smart dog figures something out.
Where he eats some mushrooms and does a little funny hop.
Yeah. Or in some fucking game or something, he actually, I think I'm going to the movie now. Yeah, I'm not gonna say that, but
cover the movie on the Patreon.
Yeah, sorry, some of it bleeds together, but apart from him occasionally doing a thing where it's because he's a smart dog that he's doing it, but the characters almost don't even recognize it. They just sometimes think it just happens coincidentally.
Right. They think this whole data dog thing is bullshit.
Yeah.
It's just a fucking dog, dude.
Yeah, but he's a smart dog.
He's a very smart boy.
He's a very smart
smart boy.
Yeah. He knows that shit. But apparently he's only worth 2 oolongs, unless you know that. He is literally worth less than the meat on his bones.
I wish I could buy a corgi for 2 oolongs.
Which, one thing they did point out in the in one of the commentaries that I didn't notice is that he gets bigger as the show goes on. He just gets
chunkier.
He just gets chunky. Yeah, he's the one guy on there who's getting fed.
Yeah, he's getting all table scraps.
Yeah, but he could fit in a suitcase first episode, and then by the end he is just a little log.
Rotund.
Yeah, good for him, man.
Good for him.
He gets the best deal the whole
he
show.
He really does get the best ending.
Yeah. And then, there's Ed, who, we kind of talked about before, but just abandoned child on the ravages of Earth, which we should definitely get into the lore, where it's at some point one of these, because obviously corporations suck and can't do anything right, one of these fucking, or one of the earliest gateways explodes and blows up a big chunk of the moon, and so now the moon is just shooting down asteroids on Earth all the time.
Yep.
And just destroys all the infrastructure there. And I guess, thank God, we're settled on other planets, because now nobody wants to go to Earth, and like the people who are still on Earth are like just the
They
most.
live underground in
Yeah.
tunnels. They're reclusive. They're very tribic, almost tribal. Like not necessarily, but they're very like there are pockets of humanity that are.
It's like we see like a shanty town
Yeah.
basically in like an old train station, I think, where it's like, just all these people kind of like living off of the scraps of what's left.
It's like
right?
wherever they can, because fuck, man,
And, like-
I can't afford a spaceship to go
Yeah.
to Mars, and it's like, hey guys, that's gonna be us. Katy Perry gets to go to Mars. We don't.
Yeah, that sucks. I wonder what the family tree looks like from Katy Perry to Faye Valentine. I feel like there's something there.
Oh God, Josh. Oh God, that's scary.
But yeah, like it's just like it feels like all of culture has died in America, or not in America,
On the
or on
planet.
Earth, right? Where it's like, the only people who are left here are like the people who are like too poor to go anywhere else, or just like so down and out on their luck that they need to stay here where it's cheap to live, I guess.
The only culture is survival.
Basically, right? And it's like it's not implied that it's like a Mad Max kind of thing where it's like, there's a lot of like,
It's not like
crime
Borderlands
gangs and stuff like
psychos.
that.
They're not like insane. They're not gonna rip your face off.
It's
and
just
eat
like,
it.
it's just shanties, it's just people just like living off of what they can find or whatever, and like you get a sense of that when Jed kind of like visits around trying to look for this elusive hacker. It's like, he gets offered like what I have to assume are like 20-year-old peeps that are still good in the box. And he's like,
At least 20
what is
years
this?
old.
What is this weird, this weird Earth thing? I don't get it. And it's like, yeah, because culture hasn't moved on from this place.
They're stuck.
You know?
They are literally pulling things out of the dirt and seeing what happens.
And like even when we see like the cops there, where it's like, these are people in like a uniform and they have like what we would assume in the real world is like a proper job. It's like they're so incompetent that they get like outwitted by a fucking crazy kid with a fucking drone. And it's like, these are the cops that are being left here.
Hey, really smart fucking kid.
Yeah, but these are like the cops that they're too dumb to go anywhere else. The cops who
The
don't
mall
deserve
cops.
a promotion to go anywhere else. Essentially, yeah, they're the mall cops in the dead mall that is Earth.
That is Earth. Wow.
And then we later descend into an actual dead mall in dead Earth.
Which, again, one of the coolest scenes of them like spelunking
Yeah.
down into this place, and like they find like these massive bodies of still water, and they're like, whoa, fucking.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you every single time they explore something in the show, it's like they feel like they've really thought through how every single part of the lore affects not only the world but the people who live there. It's like, we even see like, like in this wreckage where there was like some like old abandoned space station or something. It's like there's still just hobos living there because it's free and nobody feels like picking up this fucking destroyed space station.
Right.
And there are, I guess, enough pockets of air that they can live up there. So it's like, yeah, let's just stay out of everybody's way and, fucking do what we can up here. It's like, okay.
And in the middle of all this, we just abandon our child.
Yeah. Which, like, the assumption, I guess, is that, like, Ed's father is, like, this person who is himself kind of loosey-goosey, so it's like, he just doesn't have, like, the time or the energy between, his general demeanor and, like, his work that he cares to take care of a child. So it's like, yeah, I'm gonna leave him with this fucking nun. Have a good day.
Worst Father of the Year award.
Yeah, he really sucks as a father.
Second only to Shao Tucker. Worst Father of the Year, Gambino. Second worst Father of the Year, Shao Tucker. Third worst Father of the Year, Ed's dad.
Okay, but where does Pete Hegseth fall into that?
Not in discussion. Real guy, alcoholic.
Oh, okay.
Evil, Nazi tattoos, in charge of our government.
But yeah, like, I was just thinking about that because I saw a friend send me a video where, like, he was talking about, like, you know, like his family or something, and
his kids are standing in the background, like looking at each other.
Yeah, like,
the fuck is this guy saying? Can you believe he just said that shit?
Yeah.
When your 8-year-old knows you're fucking lying through your teeth.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, anyways, back to Cowboy Bebop. Yeah, bad father, you know, abandons the child, and the child is like, okay, well, I'm not going to get attached to anything, I guess. So,
right,
like,
until the point that she gets picked up by the Bebop crew.
Yeah.
And she's like, wait, these guys are bounty hunters. They go and find shit. That's what they do. They can find my dad.
Yeah.
And that does not go... I mean, they find him.
Yeah.
He's there. Fuck that guy.
Yeah. You know, and like, I will say one of my slightest disappointments with Cowboy Bebop is that, like, Ed doesn't really factor into a lot of the episodes very much, which, like, I get it. She's a child. You don't want to put her in danger too much, but, like, she mostly just, like, sits on the Bebop doing nothing and then, like, occasionally, like, hacks a thing to help them, you know?
Right. Or, like, plays chess against somebody.
Yeah, which, like, again, like, beyond that, she also just, like, adds another flavor into the dish whenever they're on the spaceship, which is very often.
Right.
You know, just, like, you know, just adding a new quirky little perspective to see things through, and, you know, it's just, that's fun.
Right.
But, like, apart from Mushroom Samba and the occasional hacking bits, she doesn't help much, and it's a little bit disappointing.
You would love to see more of any of these characters.
That's true. You know, and like we were saying, like, part of what I think makes the show stick is that there isn't more, right? It's this and the movie and the crummy Netflix show, and that's all that exists of Cowboy Bebop, really.
Right.
So like,
this in the movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, I love this. I don't think there should be any more.
Yeah. That's one of the real problems with fandom is that, like, you think you want more, but you don't. You don't want more. You really don't.
You don't want more. Because again, they did all they wanted to.
Yeah.
This is exactly what they wanted it to be. And it is perfect. Just allow it to be it. And Shinichiro Watanabe has continually, like, oh, we're developing on the same universe. We're developing on Cowboy Bebop. We're developing on... But, like, these characters have already had more than their fair share of terrible things happen to them. We can let them rest peacefully.
Yeah. You make it sound like they all died at the end.
It feels like it.
No, only Spike is dead, you know. Oof. What do you think the ship is like, just Faye and Jet? What do you think it's like?
Jet might have killed himself.
Maybe. Yeah.
And then Faye probably sold the Bebop.
Yeah, she would just sell it all and be like, you know what? I'm going to rebuild my family's old mansion and, you know.
Speaking of Faye.
300-year-old
cryonically frozen woman reborn into the world.
Yeah.
Way after anything would have ever made sense.
Yep. And, of course, we cannot forget that interest. on those fucking medical
Yeah,
bills.
you thought your medical bills were bad. Oh, try putting them in fucking collections for
Yeah.
700 years.
Yeah, like there's throughout the show there is kind of a capitalist undertone where it's like, obviously like the whole bounty hunting thing, as you said before, is just kind of like the cops are just so ineffectual that it's like, well, now we have to have like a whole service economy of people willing to put their lives on the line to catch these criminals, but then on top of that, it's like, we have the fucking the casino doing money laundering with the fucking chip scheme or whatever. And then, we have like just all sorts of insane shit
Like,
that's going on in the universe.
Any criticism you could point towards any like piece of market capitalism, and here's my soapbox. If you don't want the fucking communism talk, then you can
Skip 30 seconds.
Skip 30 seconds. It's just a hyper analysis of like the furthest possible extremes of what these systems can and will lead to.
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's not so bad that like it, leans into fascism, I guess.
No, and
but,
it's not the absolute furthest because we're not in cyberpunk territory.
But we're definitely in like a late stage capitalist society.
We're approaching very quickly.
Yeah, where like, like I was saying, like the Fae arc is really like the most distilled core of this sort of idea, where it's like literally like a person who like, from the looks of things, seems to be pretty well off on Earth before the whole accident goes on Earth, right? And, then she like, there's this accident where like a spaceship blows up, where like she blows up on a spaceship and like, she has to basically get cryogenically frozen in order for them to develop the cure necessary for her to survive whatever's happened. And it's like, and then like over that course, it's like, just due to the passage of time, she accrues all this debt, and then, she gets into this relationship with this guy, and the guy dies and gives her his whole estate, and she's like, all right, I'll take the estate because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Turns out
the whole estate is dead.
The whole estate is dead. And so now she's just so far into the damn hole.
Yep.
And it's just like, what does capitalism take from you, right? And like, isn't the accident related to the gateway explosion that cracks the moon? Like, that's the implication anyway. So it's like, just all of this shit where it's like, the ineffectuality of this corporation that we establish in another episode, they know how fucking rinky-dink these gateways are, and
rinky-dink transportation vehicles blowing up and killing people? Where have I heard that before?
Don't... Do not buy a motor vehicle that has at most 12 polygons on it.
The one time I will vehemently recommend you go for something with better graphics is vehicles.
Yeah.
If the vehicle is rendered with more polygons than the Nintendo 64 can handle, it is probably a little better. I can't make that guarantee in every situation, but there is one that I know it is.
That's not fair. I think that the cars that Superman picks up in Superman 64 have more polygons than the Cybertruck. So you might have to go back to like the Super Nintendo or something.
Yeah, okay, Star Fox 64. Sorry, Star Fox original.
Yeah, fucking wireframe ass car. The fucking 1974 ILM fucking hand animation is more complex than the Cybertruck.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, or was that USC? Whatever. Anyway. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's all dumb California nonsense.
California nuts.
But yeah, like, and it also literally strips her memory from her. Like, she has no recollection of her past, and it's just like literalizing to the extent, like, how much late stage capitalism can take from you, where it can literally take away the life that you had previously in all forms, and it's only through the miracle that like one videotape survives that she's able to piece any of it together. Right.
One Betamax.
One Betamax, which like, is it a little bit convenient? Sure, but like they go through the work to be like, oh, it came from this fucking society on Earth that was like rummaging through old tapes and finding them for people, which like, I guess that's one of the good things going on in this world, is that there's just a bunch of people like rummaging through old tapes and trying to find down the descendants who had them.
my media preservation ass digging through puddles to try and find Betamax tapes.
Yeah. The one thing I don't think the show is fair for is depicting media preservationists as just, snooty little nerds. Oh, you just don't understand how great these 90s sitcoms were.
There are people out there like that.
Yeah, those guys
And
suck.
thank God.
Really?
Listen, man.
They kind of suck to be around.
They may suck to directly interact with, but thank God that there is somebody who cares so much about Fraggle Rock that shit will be like, that people
Fair point.
a century from now will have the ability to know that it existed.
That's good. Yeah, I definitely agree with that much. I think that is a bit of it's a harmful stereotype of us Criterion types, though the Criterion guy does exist. Maybe they need less rights, but they don't need to lose all of their rights. We shouldn't kick their Betamax.
We certainly shouldn't kick the Betamax. I'm not even a guy who knew what a Betamax was before Cowboy Bebop.
Really?
And I don't think I would have kicked one if I saw it in the wild.
Yeah, but that's just the thing where it's like they're not used to physical media, right? Like, I don't even know if there's like a version of that exists. Like, if there's like another like analog for that to them, right? Like, they don't really show like USB drives or anything like that. It's all just broadcast and like internet connection and stuff like that.
I mean, fucking go ask a 5-year-old how they listen to music.
Yeah.
They wouldn't tell you a vinyl or a CD or
they're like,
a cassette.
They're like, they say,
What's on YouTube?
Yeah,
What's on Spotify?
Yeah, they're like, hey Siri, play whatever on Apple Music. That's it.
They don't even understand the functionality of getting a device to. Hey Siri.
Sorry.
They don't even get the like concept of manually operating a device or like selecting songs to curate onto a device.
Yeah.
They're like, hello, AI companion that sits in my house and listens to me 24/7. Play Wheels on the Bus.
And that's not their fault. They were born into this world.
They were born into this world, into this horrible, fucked up world where iPods don't exist anymore.
Apple re-released the iPod. Do it.
Microsoft re-released the Zune. I dare you, you fucking cowards.
Remember when there was a Zune in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2?
Was there?
Yeah. It's like at the very end where it's like, they've reconnected with some culture on Earth and it's like, oh well, I got this for you and it's a fucking Zune. Full up with some new songs. And it finally gives them the excuse to play fucking Radiohead in the third one. And it's like,
that's
and I can get into a whole rant about this, but I really think that the soundtracks in those movies went downhill as they were given the ability to license more popular songs. But that's my personal opinion.
Do a whole Patreon episode on that because I'm more than happy to sit through an hour of that.
Starting with Creep was kind of cringe. I'm sorry. But
yeah, you really got to do something to earn putting Creep in your soundtrack, and Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is not it.
Anyways, back to Faye. It's like, when she finally gets into this new world, it's like, the one thing she has going for her is that she doesn't have an identity to hold her down, right?
Right.
That's like the one, the one good thing about this situation that she's able to leverage is that, like, she doesn't literally have a barcode on the back of her neck telling everybody who she is and how much she owes anyone. Right. So she can literally just up and disappear.
She has absolutely nothing, for better and for worse. And you're right, that does mean that, like, well, at the drop of a hat, if I lose everything,
just
disappearing act.
Exactly. And I don't know how much time is supposed to be implied to have taken place between, like, she gets revived and, like, she finally, like, she's able to escape her former debts, at least for them. But then, like, is it like they finally, like, place a bounty on her so that she can come back and pay her debts, and that's what gets her in that scrap with the fucking casino? Is it literally that much?
I believe that's it in what is it, episode 3, Honky Tonk Women. She's in that
so she's like
in a pawn shop, a jewelry shop. She's talking to this guy, and I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what she's doing in there, but she gets set upon by, like, a fucking gang.
Yeah.
And she what the first rule in a gunfight is?
Shoot them before they shoot.
Shoot them before the... Yeah, exactly.
Which is exactly the kind of thing where it's like, I'm trying to say something cool, but I've never actually been in a gunfight before. Kind of thing.
It works until it doesn't, and then she gets taken away to the casino, and they're like, we know you have debts. We will help you if you help us.
Yeah, but... Yeah, that's just, like, that's kind of the character they craft, where she's like... She just doesn't want to create any attachments at all because, and it's again this thing where it's like, nobody wants to say they care as much as they do because that's vulnerability.
You're hitting on something again, which is really strong for me in this show. You know what? I'm not going to get that personal. I'm going to keep the mask on for a bit.
Okay.
But that's just something that's very palpable to me, is these people who, they are all so afraid of what has already happened to them to happen again that they build these masks. They put up these walls. They do not allow anyone else into themselves.
Yeah.
For fear of loss.
Mm-hmm.
All of that. I mean, like, except for Ein.
Yeah.
Which, like, dog. But it's all different aspects of the fear of losing someone or something.
Yeah.
And it's these different sides of it, like losing a family member, either through abandonment or through them passing, or losing a loved one, or not even necessarily losing them because they've died, but just like the loss of growing apart from somebody that you care about. Yeah. And the ways that these characters all embody different aspects of that internal struggle at different points in time through each one of these episodes. Those kind of character strings are being pulled in some different way or another. And I think I for no particular reason that I'll divulge on the internet to millions of strangers, that resonates with me heavily.
Yeah. Like, I think that, like, it all kind of goes down into, like, the whole, like, just the idea of, like, I don't know if code switching is the right word, but it's the only thing that comes to mind, where it's like we just interact with people differently than we actually are because we have to. We feel like we have all of these obligations to other people to not be ourselves in certain cases because it'll be inconvenient for them or it'll create problems for us. It's just, it's just this shit that, like, always, like, it always makes characters more interesting. And, like, you have these 4 people who have all gone through these 4 different sets of circumstances, but have all, like you said, experienced these losses that bring them to this point. And, it's only through each other and, like, eventually kind of, like, they're all kind of, like, learning to get through their own shit and learning about each other's shit And it's only through that they're able to like actually kind of come together, you know, even if by the end they end up kind of splitting apart just because, like, you know, at the very least, Ed and Spike cannot let go of it to some degree or another.
Right.
You know, like, Faye is eventually able to, like, recognize that her past is, that she's never going to have the past life that she did. And, you know, she can recognize that that past exists and sucks, but she has to move on from it. Because literally that world does not exist anymore.
Right.
None of the people she knew existed anymore.
And with Jet, I mean, there's something there where he has stepped away from a very meaningful relationship to him.
Yeah.
He has separated himself from what used to be his entire life. All he knew was the ISSP, the people he knew from that, and the job that he did from that. And him removing himself from that was... I've never been entirely clear on Jet's lore, but what was it through an accident? Was it through
My understanding is that, like, so they have the episode where it's basically like exploring like this one case that he did as a cop, where he gets betrayed by one of his by his partner, essentially, you know, just like classic neo-noir stuff.
Right.
But like, well, just classic noir stuff, not neo-noir stuff. But like, you know, but when he gets betrayed in that case, and like he doesn't know why that was the case, but I think that's how he lost his arm, right? Is that he was shot off.
Right.
So, or like shot in such a way where they had to amputate it. And, you know, I don't know if it's implied that that's why he was taken off the force or whatever, but it would kind of make sense to me, or at the very least that like such an incident like left him emotionally unable to do the same line of work.
Right. And
You know.
so he either through a leave of absence or any culmination of these things coming together, he steps away from this.
Yeah.
There's a time where he lives a quiet life, and
or maybe he's under the impression that he thinks he can do more good as a freelancer than under the police.
Right.
Right? Because like we said, the whole reason why the
bounty system exists is because the police are too few and far between, and
probably
too broadly incompetent, too buried in bureaucracy, too overly gung-ho to handle situations in ways that you expect police to want to handle situations.
Yeah, and then of course there's the corruption, right? You know, just generally. You know, it's just like he's an actually like virtuous cop, which, you know, like, I don't know if it's popular to say this in this time and age, but like, I think that like I can say ACAB while also saying that like ACAB asterisk. It's like
you can be a good person and be a police officer.
You can't be a good police officer.
You cannot be a good police officer.
At least not the way the police is set up.
In the current American police system.
Yeah.
Being a good police officer is a complete oxymoron because the system is predicated upon drug incarceration, just as one. Like, we see examples all over the world, shout out System of a Down, where, like, heroin addicts. I'm not sure exactly where this program is, but like if you're a heroin addict and you go to the fucking doctor and you say, I'm a heroin addict, they set you up on a course where it's like, okay, we have clean needles, we have pure heroin, we will go through the process of detoxing you.
Yeah.
You won't have to go through withdrawal symptoms. If you overdose, you're literally already at the hospital. We will take care of you.
Yeah.
As opposed to the American system of, oh, you did a drug? How about jail?
Yeah.
Oh, you relapsed. Nobody could have seen that coming. Jail again. Now with your criminal arrest record, you'll never be able to get a job. Like, it just fuck people while they're down.
Exactly. Right. It's just like the system is not made to, you know, help people get back up to themselves. It's just about like quote unquote punishing the wrong behavior.
Right.
Which, like, not to say that drug abuse doesn't hurt other people. It can certainly hurt other people in your lives.
But it certainly can.
But by and large, the only person who's being hurt when you're doing drugs is you.
Right.
And it's crazy to punish people for that.
Right. Well, it is crazy to punish people for that instead of treating it like what it is, a disease. Addiction is a disease. It can be helped medically. It can be helped through therapy. It can be overcome, and it is not a mark against you as a person necessarily.
Yeah, and just to bring it back on course, it's just like that's Jet's whole deal is that like he is too virtuous for the system. And, obviously he can't escape the capitalism of it all, and especially the capitalism of the bounty hunting system. But I guess he, with the freedom of the free market, he at least has the sense that he can do the good that he wants to do,
right,
as opposed to getting involved in the quagmire.
And then on the basically polar opposite end of that spectrum is the second in command of the Red Dragon Syndicate himself.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about Vicious for a second.
Let's talk about Vicious.
I mean, I guess we just kind of have to talk about like Spike and Vicious and Julia as like one whole component thing, because like as much as I think they are cool and like Vicious kind of has its own thing going on, it's like you can't really talk about the way they're in the show without just talking about Spike.
Right.
Because like they're all kind of just extensions of exploring Spike.
Right.
So like, and I guess that's one of the other criticisms I have, is that it would be cooler to see Julia in a context that isn't related to Spike. We see a tad of it when like she's getting shot at by by some fucking syndicate cronies, and Faye gets to hang out with her for a second, and
sure,
we get like 3 minutes of Bonnie and Clyde, and it's fun.
Right.
But not Bonnie and Clyde, Thelma and Louise. Got my Lovers on the Run stories mixed up. But, like, that's one of the things, is just like Julia doesn't exist except as a thing for Spike to be obsessed with.
Right. And I honestly, sometimes I don't know how much I read it as an allegory or a metaphor more than literal, because part of me almost thinks this is getting way out there. It is obviously not true, but like part of me almost thinks, at least for a long time in Spike's mind, Julia is gone. Julia is dead. There is no more Julia. And then any possible indication that that is not the case, it's the White Rabbit. He's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely an element of the Julia thing. I just think that it's kind of interesting that like we only explore his perspective of the story, and we barely get like half an episode of her perspective, really, where it's like
that is the one thing where I'm like, okay, if we got another episode of Cowboy Bebop, one more episode of Cowboy Bebop, it would be interesting to explore that dynamic from the other side.
Yeah, and they probably could have mitigated a lot of the people being like, can we get a Spike and Julia story? Can we get that as a miniseries? They could probably mitigated that if they were just like, let's have one episode where we explore what it was like for them, And like, I get it. The whole thing is that we never see his backstory incomplete. We only ever see like the fragments of it and how people discuss it. But like, it would have been nice.
Mia's like, I want this thing. It could have been nice. It would have been nice. But is the story stronger for omitting it?
It also would have clarified one thing, which like the nonlinear nature of these flashbacks kind of like didn't really imply to me quite right. But like, I was not aware that like Julia and Vicious were the official thing, and then Julia was dating Spike on the backside.
Yeah.
I was not aware of that. I thought it was like a weird like not necessarily a threesome, but maybe like an open relationship or something.
No.
I was not sure exactly what it was because, again, it was being told non-linearly. I didn't know, like, it wasn't even clear for the first couple of times that I saw it that it was Vicious there, because it's literally like just one shot that implies it.
Right.
So like, but yeah, I get why Vicious and Spike have the beef now. It's very personal between them.
Right.
And it's not just like, you were going to leave and I didn't want that because I was a fucking, I wanted to take over.
Right. Well, and honestly, I mean, you can see it more like Spike is definitely the instigator in here. He's the shit stirrer.
Yeah.
He's kind of directly at fault.
Yeah.
And
I mean, Vicious definitely has like a shit stirrer side of him too. It's just
I
like
mean, Vicious is not a good guy.
well, no, but what I'm saying is that like, he like actively attempts to assassinate the High Guard like twice.
Right.
So like he is a bit of like a pot stirrer, but to him it's like it's trying to ascend, you know. Whereas Spike just loves trouble for the love of trouble sometimes, Like it just because of the fact that like, he perceives every single moment of his life as borrowed time. It's like,
This could be exciting.
I might as well just like live for it, It's, I guess it's hedonistic in a way, even though it's like,
definitely.
definitely not like to the extreme where he's like, drinking and partying and fucking all day,
Right. It is not like it's not like a locomotive of self-destruction. It is simply like
he likes to feel the rush of danger.
what will be will be. Memento mori.
Yeah.
He literally like if an opportunity to do something cool and dope presents itself to him, he's gonna throw himself into it.
Yeah.
It's like, fuck it, let's feel that rush.
Yep, and if I catch a whiff of, Julia being around, I'm going to track that shit down, and if I die in the process, whatever, because...
So be it.
Yeah, I've
died once before.
Yeah, I died once before, and either way, the worst that can happen is that I still don't have her. So, Which, like, that's the whole Spike thing, is, like, the mix of, like, not caring until, like, the one thing that he wants shows up in his life, and then he just cares too much.
And then nothing else matters.
Yep.
Which, I mean, it's kind of a character examination in hubris, in maybe hubris isn't the right word, or maybe it is. Just the kind of self-assuredness that, like, even if there is a level of nonchalance, a level of not caring, a sense of him throwing caution to the wind, there is still kind of that drive in the back of his head that says, I bet I can do this.
Yeah.
And, he can until he can't.
Yeah, he can until he can't. That's that's how a lot of things work, is that you can until you can't.
Fucking Ralph Bakshi all over again.
That will make sense to anybody who isn't in our walls listening to our conversations.
But yeah,
It'd be fun to do a Patreon on Fritz the Cat or the Lord of the Rings animated movie. That'd be fun.
It would be. I'm sorry. I'm sitting here like, holy shit. Spike is dead.
Spike is dead. He's gone. Poor guy. Yeah. That's okay. He lived a full life.
And I carry that shit with me.
Yeah. Let me think. What are the episodes we haven't talked about? We haven't talked much about Jupiter Jazz.
We haven't talked about Jupiter Jazz. I was kind of trying to get through not get through, but I wanted to establish the kind of character portraits before we talk about that, because part of that story that is a very important through line is Spike's drive to find Julia. That's how we kind of get in this position in the first place. And I'm going to actually pull up the synopsis of these 2 episodes to kind of reference for the time being, because they are very dense and they kind of deal with some subject matter that's a little sensitive. Maybe not sensitive is the
I think
right
you have
word.
the wrong one. You got Real Folk Blues.
That is Real Folk Blues. But it deals with some stuff that I feel like is fairly important to discuss, especially through a modern lens. I guess I might let you take the lead on this one a little bit, but Grin. We're kind of dancing around it. Grin is a very interesting character, and I think is one of the stronger character portrayals that we get of a non-binary identity in at least anything from this time.
Yeah, like, I don't know if I would categorize him as non-binary, or, yeah, him, that's the pronouns he uses, as non-binary,
Sure.
Because, I mean, obviously, if you're non-binary and you see representation in Gren, that's cool. Definitely not going to try to take that away from you. I'm just making an argument from my perspective.
Right. And again, don't let me put any labels on this shit that you take too seriously, because I'm stupid and straight and cishet. So I'm an ally that is operating from some mild level of ignorance here.
Yeah, if you're non-binary and listening to the show, please give us your perspective. We would love to have it. But, you know, so like Jupiter Jazz is interesting, you know, just as a queer representation text, just in general, like not just from a Gren perspective, because it's also like it's a society entirely of men,
right?
Essentially, right? Like I think the stat they say is like it's 90% men, so it's like the 10% of women are the people who are like tough enough to deal with this, right? You know, or just don't have the ability to seek out a life elsewhere, you know? So the implication is that, like, you know, in the same way that, like, a lot of people might discover that their preferences are broader than they thought in other male-only situations, you know? Some people have been to summer camp, you know? But, you know, but, like, there's, you know, you see, like, either trans women or drag queens. I don't know exactly what the right term would be for them, because, you know, it's not really explored with that much grace.
It's certainly not. And there's also an element, like, how much are we pulling from our Western conceptions of gender identity versus like more Eastern conceptions, where a lot of cultures throughout the world have established third genders or established like gender non-conforming quote unquote genders. So like there's some of that is definitely kind of strange from a modern American like 2025 view of gender and sexuality.
But like they're queer sex workers, right? Is basically the thing. And it's like they're just, I don't want to say that it's like a cruel representation. I don't think it is. I think that one of the things that the show is just great at in general is just having a deep level of empathy for most of its characters that aren't like abjectly evil.
Right.
You know, like, you know, even Puro LeFou, who is like, you know, to his core is a level of evil. It still gives him the, you know, the levity of like just seeing his perspective and seeing that like deep down there's the child inside of him, right? You know, and like the queer characters in this moment where we see Spike talking to some just to the queer folks on the street, it's like, you know, it's kind of playing off like the drag queen stereotypes, you know, like kind of like being flirtatious and like he's just not into it in a way where it's like more cringy for him than anything else.
Sure.
But like he's not mean to them in any way, you know, and like not to spoil too much for Lazarus, but like, I think you can definitely see the improvement in later shows where it's like, even in Samurai Champloo, where it's like,
absolutely.
Again, not to spoil too much, but there's a gay character in one of the early episodes, and it's treated with a fair amount of respect. Even if like the characters do kind of like crack some jokes about it, it feels more like they're cracking jokes just from their own ignorant perspective than
Right.
the show being non-sympathetic to them, right? And then, but back to Gren, it's like, to us, when we first meet him, he just perceives as like a dude with kind of like a slightly effeminate like construction and like long hair,
Mildly
but like
androgynous dude.
yeah, just mildly androgynous, right? And like it's then kind of revealed in like a little bit of shock value, I guess, that he has female breasts, right?
Right.
And that's a result of like this experimental drug that he was given after the war that had bad side effects to his hormones. And that's kind of why I don't think it's like non-binary representation, because it's like it was not intentional on his part and he doesn't really identify with it. So like I just don't really perceive it as that kind of representation.
No.
But that being said, like, apart from the shock value it is initially given, there's never any judgment for it.
No, certainly
Right?
not.
Gren is just allowed to exist in the body that he exists in, and,
And he's just a guy.
Yeah.
He's just he's as human as any of the rest of us. He
Yeah.
goes through all the same problems the rest of us deal with.
Yeah.
And
he's given a full-on, like, veteran flashback where, it's like, he and Vicious were in the war together, and it's like, he thought that, he and Vicious were like, tight comrades in the war or whatever, when it's like, no, dude was, just using you or whatever.
Vicious is just vicious. He's just there to elevate himself in whatever way he can think to do so.
Exactly. And like, he's eventually just like given his ability to like shoot off into the stars and like see, just like conclude a little bit of that for himself before he dies, and it's quite lovely that it's just like, here's this person who doesn't exactly fit our expectations of a gender binary, but like is given a full character arc.
Exactly. He's given all the respect, if not more so than any other character that we come across in the series.
Yeah. And that's lovely, I think.
It's awesome. I mean, like, again, it's not like direct non-binary. That's not necessarily the right term.
I think Ed is
But
closer to
gender
that.
non-conforming
Yeah,
there's a lot of representation. I mean, like, Spike is missing an eye. Jet is literally paraplegic.
Yeah.
Faye is 300 years old and has memory loss.
Yeah.
Ed is
A little
like
androgyny
the androgyny
goblin.
goblin.
Yeah.
I mean, like this is one of the most like solidly representative shows
Yeah.
I've ever seen.
And even-
there
and
are
even-
connections that anybody
Yeah.
can pull to any of
And
these
even
characters.
beyond them, like we said, like the cultures of this world are such a big melting pot, and like, is it played for, there's a little bit of stereotyping going on with some of it, but like, to me, that's more of like pastiching the genres than anything else, right? The way Mexican culture is kind of pastiched is more about like the way that Westerns that it's inspired by.
Well, right, we get the scene. It's very much played like a straight Western. If we go back to the first episode, where there's the establishing shot inside the bar, and we've got the three old
Yeah.
fucks playing cards, and
Yeah.
by golly, you fucks wouldn't be able to drink in this bar if it, and then just that's going on, kind of
Yeah.
tertiary in the background, and we get this like shot on the bar of starts with S. Damn. Solon. Asimov Solensen. I don't know why that took so long. Of him doing this like deal with the bartender, and he's like, "I want some Bloody Marys. I've only got beer. Well, I brought the tomato juice." Like they just like this very like coded kind of like backdoor deal thing, and it's very much just playing off of the like spaghetti western.
Exactly, but like but like I said, like there are so many cultures of this world, and every single character of every single race and religion or whatever is just treated like a person who has their own shit going on, their own quirks, their own necessity to the plot.
Right. I mean, like, and it's, especially when the bad guys in any given episode, like, there is always a level of sympathy to be drawn for any of these characters. It's always like, even in like one's Gateway Shuffle, like that's one where we can't really see like a direct empathetic line with Mother.
Yeah.
But like
you kind of get where she's coming from.
You understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Like of all the terrorists that do exist in the world that we live in, eco-terrorists are the most based.
Yeah. Their heart's in the right place. They should probably find some... they probably need to go to therapy.
They need to find more healthy ways to do these things. But I definitely get where you're coming from if you say, wow, oil rigs are destroying the planet faster than me not recycling is. Yeah. And no amount of me shouting from the rooftops is ever going to change the billionaires who profit off of it.
Yeah, and like... I'm just looking through the episode list, like, the fucking guy who literally, like, creates the whole chess game that's, like, destroying the gateways is, like, this guy who was, like, fucking, backdoor dealed out of the gateway projects that he was working on and trying to improve the safety of, right? And then he, like, sets up this whole plan, and then, I guess, just, fucking dementia forgets about it. And it's just like, man, that's an insane backstory for a guy to have.
Right,
but
and it's like there are so many levels to it, because not only do you feel the plight of, like, holy shit, he was only ever trying to do what was right for this, and only after being shot down a million different ways does he finally kind of break and say, fuck it, I'm taking this in my own hands.
Yeah.
At which point, once the plan is set in motion, he's lost it. He's no longer him.
Yeah. And, like, just through, like, health issues that he cannot control, it's like that person is gone, and now he's just, like, he's just a guy who plays chess on the computer.
And can we really prosecute this guy who just plays chess for these things that, I mean, yes, if you take this physical body, it's the same guy, but, like, he's not there anymore.
Yeah. Like, and, just looking through the list again, it's like, oh my god, we need to talk about Cowboy Funk, because Cowboy Funk is a fun episode.
Oh yeah, like, the serial bomber that Spike is just like, whatever, dude. Let me see that cowboy.
Yeah, that's just so funny, where it's like, there's this guy who is like, he cares about the problems in society. He, like, has a handle on, like, the corruption of this late stage capitalist world. But, like, the thing he wants more than anything is attention, and nobody is willing to give it to him, because, like, they're all just focused on this fucking cowboy guy who looks a hell of a lot like Spike and acts a lot like Spike, and Spike is annoyed as fuck about it. Because he's like, you're me, I hate you. That is just, again, it's like,
it's peak.
Even the fun episodes are ones where we're exploring, like, again, some elements of the world or some elements of some character's story and personality. There's never an episode wasted, I don't think. No. Which, that's part of the problem with a lot of longer shows, is just that, like, they feel the need to pad time, which I definitely get. You know, like all these productions are like being made by people and people need paychecks, but like, you know,
when you watch JoJo's 1 through 6 and you slog through that middle section of part 3.
yeah.
And as much as I love JoJo's, when I step over to something like Cowboy Bebop that's so concise and so direct and so spot on with everything that it's doing at every moment in time.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, dude. It's like the difference between eating, a double cheeseburger with large fry from Whataburger and going to fucking Momo and having an A7 Wagyu, you know?
Yeah. It's just like, you know,
Both are excellent.
Yeah, the Whataburger gets the job done, but like, you're dipping those fries in the sauce, and that's because the fries aren't very good on their own, and you know it, you know. And it's fine for a potato to not taste that great, I guess, but like,
right. And sometimes the fries do need some sauce, but like, you got a large fry. There's a lot of fries to chew on.
yeah, and like, you know, Whataburger's fine. Get some real food sometimes, you know. Make some real food sometimes. Make food. It's good for you.
Special bell peppers and beef.
Bell peppers and beef. Oh my God. Having the fucking have the Cowboy Bebop watch party and you make bell peppers with no beef. And the ramen cup noodles with the fucking string thing that instant cooks them. Which like those are cool. Those are really, really cool. It'd be crazy if that existed and they didn't like also figure out how to put some meat in it, you know? Which like in this world I believe, because again, it's like, you know, we're innovating up here, but we're not thinking about like the bigger picture.
Which I don't know if this is something that I've seen some YouTuber do, or if this is like actually just a thing in Japanese society now. They have self-heating ramen cups.
What?
Yeah, you can go to a 7-Eleven in Japan, and there's like they have that. I think they're bigger than like the instant cup noodle that we think of, and it's more like a udon bowl kind of. But I'm pretty sure I've seen that you could buy in store kind of like a Rip Tab self-heating ramen thing.
I know that.
And
like,
I may be schizophrenic. That may just be something somebody did on YouTube as a bit.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I know that like this is technically got to be possible because like I know MREs. Some MREs have like a kind of like chemical compound where like you mix the two parts together and then you put the little baggie of steak in the thing and zip it up and in a few minutes it's cooked. You know, like I know that sort of thing exists. So I wouldn't be super surprised, but like I didn't know it existed. You know, but yeah, just like you said, every episode is an invitation to learn and to empathize with the characters. And I think that's just what makes it special. You know, it's not a thing that a lot of anything does, you know? Yeah. Self-feeding ramen. Wow. I gotta look into that.
It's much more MRE style, like
Yeah.
you were saying.
Yeah, it's
but,
definitely more elaborate, but like you could definitely see how like at some point in the future, if they figure out the manufacturing of it, they could just have a thing where it's like, you know, you pull the tab and it like mixes the two chemicals together and then that heats up the thing.
Right, like the guy that made the fucking hot dog glow sticks. I'm sure you've seen that one.
Yeah, I've seen that one. But yeah, I mean, what else is there to talk about? The music?
I can't say anything about the music. The music speaks for itself.
Yeah, the music does speak for itself. The one anecdote I do want to say is that apparently Yoko Kanno didn't write any of the tracks with the episodes in mind. She just wrote the music. They used the music wherever it felt right.
How?
Oh shit. Battery dead?
Dead battery.
But yeah, I mean, like, of course, the influence of this show is insane, I think, right? Like, you know, first of all, I think that, like, you know, just for an American audience, it's like, you know, it kind of just, like, changed the way people think and experience anime, right?
Yeah, for a lot of people, I think so.
Because, like, you know, what existed in the American mainstream for anime for this? It was basically like Dragon
Sailor
Ball,
Moon.
Sailor Moon, and Pokemon, right?
Akira.
I mean, Akira kind of existed, but even then it was still on the periphery, right?
Right.
I don't even think that movie got a theatrical release in America until, like, you know, well after when it had established kind of a cult identity.
Right.
You know, so, like, that movie, you know, that movie kind of exists, like, kind of in, like, the, you're actually digging into this side of things. But, like, if you're talking about anime that most people knew about, it's, like, Dragon Ball, Sailor Moon, Pokemon, right? You know, but this is, like, it just kind of, like, I guess it just taught American audiences that they could get and experience more out of animation than, you know, anything that was even, like, you know, fucking Family Guy or whatever,
Right.
you know?
Well, I mean, one of the I say this all the time, but like I said this at the top of the episode. Not even considering anime, Cowboy Bebop is a show that everyone should watch at least once before leaving the planet.
Yeah.
Just in terms of television, it is one of the best shows to ever be aired.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I don't know if I could get my mom into it, but, like, I could try. Wouldn't it be fun if it was, like, on Patreon? It's like, okay, I got my mom to watch Cowboy Bebop. You know, we watched, like, the first 4 episodes. Mom, what do you think?
If you could make that happen, that would be fucking sick.
I would definitely have to add, like, disclaimer, my mom's opinions are not my own.
Oh, God.
Mom does not speak for Cowboy, or for How to Otaku. Love you, Mom, if you're listening. But, you know, but yeah, like, I would say, like, it's definitely, like, it's one of the easiest ones to recommend to, you know, at very least to start off with, you know, like, it's just, even the smallest little gripes I have about it are incredibly small, and, like, you can make compelling arguments against them.
Right.
You know, it's like, you know, and, like, the influence of the show is just so big, right? Like, it basically, like, kickstarted, like, Adult Swim's animation or anime, you know, thing, right? Like, I think the first day that Adult Swim was airing, it was the first anime they showed.
Toonami.
So, like, it's kind of, I mean, just, like, the success of it is tied to the success of Adult Swim in a very, like, you know, just, like, the genesis of it, right? It's, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but, like, I believe that's what Wikipedia told me. And, you know, as we all know, Wikipedia doesn't lie. But, yeah, like, and, you know, of course, Adult Swim launched in, like, early September of 2001, so there were a few episodes that Americans didn't get to see for a little while, you know. And actually, my understanding is that, like, the way that Cowboy Bebop was aired in Japan was also a little weird, because there were, you know, they had a specific time slot allocated for the show, but then they eventually figured out that some of the episodes were too graphic for that time slot, so they just didn't air those few episodes.
Right. Well, and we, from my research, there is kind of like a pure split. I think right after Toys in the Attic, where they did one other episode that was kind of confirmed non-canon, that was kind of a little bit more like character dynamic focused. I haven't actually seen this episode.
Really?
I think I saw it listed.
I would love to watch this episode, though it was not included on the Blu-ray. Crunchyroll, get your shit together, okay? Why is there an episode of Cowboy Bebop that is not on the Blu-ray complete series?
This is technically the 13th episode. Let's see. This episode aired in Japan as the final episode in the original run. It was not aired outside of Japan, and so-called group Tsunami translated it and posted it on YouTube. I haven't seen this. This is actually the first time I, like, in my research for recording
Might have to
this,
put that on the Patreon.
was my first time hearing about this. So yes, we're absolutely going to cover this as part of the movie and
the other stuff.
the Shinichiro Watanabe extended oeuvre.
Yeah, but like, of course, like, as like a thing that is like, I guess, a little bit more to like Western sensibilities, at least of the time, where it was like, we're kind of coming into this era where like adult fiction can really be considered mainstream, right? Where it's like, we've moved out of the 80s kind of family-friendly blockbusters and stuff, and now it's like, okay, Weinstein, for better or worse, is a big deal in movies, and, now like a $15 million drama can be one of the biggest movies of the year, right? Yeah. That sort of thing. And like, then HBO is really kicking off in this era, and it's like, we're finally at the point where it's like, there is shit for adults that makes money for adults.
Right, and Bebop feels like an HBO show.
It does.
It feels like it could be, it could be airing right alongside season 1 of like The Wire or True Detective or
yeah, and which is such a disappointment, because then when they finally did try to make a show of it, is there anything in particular you'd like to say about it, or is it just better left forgotten? Because I might force myself to watch it at some point, but like...
The creative minds behind the Cowboy Bebop Netflix adaptation have explicitly stated that they saw it as a chance to correct the mistakes of the original. Hi, I don't know if you've heard me for the last 2 hours and 18 minutes of runtime of this podcast.
Woohoo! Longest episode.
There are no fucking mistakes. So, as far as I'm concerned, the Netflix show doesn't exist.
Yeah. But like, yeah, it's just like...
Shout out to everybody who got paid for it, but like...
Yeah.
Damn, you put your names on some dog shit.
Real sorry about that. Sorry to anybody who was probably bullied as a result of being in a bad television show. I'm sorry. I hate that we're in a world where it's like, if somebody's in a bad TV show, they're gonna get bullied for it.
It's just like, God, it's just their job, man.
Yeah, just
They may have signed up for it, but they didn't write and direct the thing. They just acted in it, and it's like.
Also, watching something that makes you mad doesn't mean you have to want them to die.
Wow. I don't know if I want to know what the internet thinks about Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah, I don't want to know either. I should catch up on that show, but I have a lot of Samurai Champloo to watch. Which, speaking of Samurai Champloo, that is one of the other big things of this, is that, like, not to just rip the terminology of one of my beloved podcasts, but it basically gives Watanabe a blank check to make whatever he wants for the rest of his life, right? Like, he can literally just go up to any place and be like, "Hi, I'm the guy who made Cowboy Bebop. I have an idea." And then they're like, "Great.
Don't tell me anything about it. Here's all the money you need. Make it."
Yeah, basically. And that just allows him to be like, "All right, here's this show about fucking samurais wandering around, just being hungry all the time. Here's one about fucking what if Buzz Lightyear was horny. Here's one in the same fucking year about fucking terrorism destroying Tokyo. Here's one about a cool band.
Little grunge duo, pop punk band, not pop punk. Carol and Tuesday's cool, but
and now here's my fucking riff on Mission Impossible.
And
yeah,
let him cook.
Let him cook, okay? He knows what he's doing, and like, on top of that, like a lot of the creative team for this went on to do other cool stuff, right?
Right.
Like, just like I think that the creation of Bones has a lot to do with the success of this show, right?
I believe that's true. I don't have any direct source for that, but I feel like I know what you mean.
Yeah, and without Bones, we wouldn't have gotten Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, so we have them to thank for that.
Kono went on to do a lot of stuff for some Gundam. She did the Ghost in the Shell standalone complex OST.
I believe she also did the score for Terror and Resonance, so we have that to look forward to.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Wow, Wikipedia kind of sucks. There it is. She did Porco Rosso.
She did the ending song for Porco Rosso, to be clear. Though I should rewatch Porco Rosso. It's probably time to watch that.
Wow, she was involved with Code Geass. She was the theme song composer.
Hell yeah.
She did Kids on the Slope, which we should probably cover at some point. She did Space Dandy. She did Terror and Resonance.
Spy X Family season 2?
Just the OP.
Oh.
I didn't realize they were still making Macross stuff. There was a new Macross short film in 2021.
Yeah, but anyways, like, it is kind of funny that Cowboy Bebop is the only thing Seatbelts has ever done. Like, Seatbelts is just the Cowboy Bebop band, I guess.
I guess so. And, they knocked it out of the fucking park.
Yeah. And, like, just... what else is there to say, right? Like, I mean... It's just dope.
I carry it with me always.
Yeah, I mean, no, you don't actually, because you told me that some unfortunate business happened to your Blu-ray copy.
Is that a thing for the Patreon episode, or do I rip that right now?
I mean, it's like a 1-minute anecdote.
Oh my god.
So, graduate high school by myself.
This, I don't even know if it was this one. I think I had like a complete box copy that had like a sleeve, and it was like a...
I think mine came with a sleeve, but I like to kind of throw away the sleeves unless they have unique art on them.
Fair. But I had a copy of the Bebop Complete Edition Blu-ray, and when I was moving into college, the day that was my move-in day, specifically like the 2-hour time slot that I was supposed to move in, bottom dropped out, just started flooding. And it was on, it was not an island, but a coastal city where this school was. So, like, when it rains, it's fucking raining and the streets are water. And I didn't drop it. My dad dropped it. And I try not to hold this against him as much as I do, but man, my dad dropped one box. And the one item in that one box that took severe, permanent, unmitigatable water damage was my copy of Cowboy Bebop. So anyway, if you want me to be able to afford another copy of Cowboy Bebop on Blu-ray,
Check out the Patreon.
check out the Patreon, like and subscribe. We don't ask for that a whole lot, and we should more, because saying it out loud to you makes you do it. Like and subscribe, please. Check out the Patreon. You get a free week trial if you want to check it out. There's some people who are already taking advantage of that. They're loving it. It's $1 a month if you want all the extra content. It's $10 a month if you want some extra goodies in there as well. All our stuff is going to be posted on there ad-free, day and date that it comes out. And then also, obviously, the bonus episodes that we get every other month for the time being. We're probably going to try and up that
To once a month.
Once a month, at least in the very near future. But yeah, that's kind of the plugs. From here on, we've got several episodes of Watanabe stuff coming up. We're covering Samurai Champloo next. After that, it's going to be Space Dandy with a special guest.
Let me pull up the schedule so I get these dates right.
Schedule.
Okay, so May 12th is Samurai Champloo, and then May 26th is Space Dandy. Then we've got Terror in Resonance on June 9th, Carol and Tuesday on June 23rd, and then June 7th, Lazarus should be finished airing, so we should be able to cover that as well.
Beautiful. We're going to wrap it up just in time for the end of Lazarus, hopefully.
Yeah. Check that show out on Adult Swim. I am enjoying it 3 episodes in. So.
I'm holding my breath. The last animated project we saw directly from Adult Swim was
yeah, but that was
something.
Kind of.
Let's hope that was a freak accident.
Yeah, that was special circumstances. It was a little wacky. I don't expect this to happen, especially with Watanabe and then like big American talent like Chad Stahelski involved.
Sure.
But
I'm holding my breath. But yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for making it through.
Remember to like, follow, subscribe, whatever you need to do while you're listening. Check us out on our Blue Skies at howtootaku.com. I'm at JD Thorne at howtootaku.com.
Brogan Live at howtootaku.com.
Check out his Twitch. Sometimes he streams.
Every once in a while. It's a Blue Moon thing.
Yeah, but click the follow button on his stream so you know when he's live.
Because whenever I get the wild hair to do it, good content happens. So you might want to be there.
Yeah, check out our TikTok as well, because I think we're going to be running through the backlog of old episodes and making a lot of stuff for that.
If you know how to efficiently and effectively generate clips for shorts and for TikToks, please reach out.
Yeah,
we need help.
Don't expect any pay though. We do not have money.
We do not have money.
Yeah. We got bell peppers and beef. Sans beef. Yeah. Sans Undertale? Is that on the Patreon?
No.
And on that note,
he's been Josh.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone, and say your line.
See you, Space Cowboy.
Woo, we did it! We finished Cowboy Bebop!